Hi, everyone. We'll wait just another minute. I see a few people are coming in. Welcome. And so we'll just give a few more people the chance to get in and we'll get started.
So you are in Central, so you're in Texas area?
I'm in St. Louis, actually. I was going to say happy first day of spring to everybody as we woke up to 30 degrees in the Midwest.
Oh, we're here in Southern California. We're going to have a high of 73 today. So
Kind of perfect. Yes.
Not too hot, not too cold. Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and say hi in the chat so everybody can see how it works. Voila. Okay, we have a few people that have joined us. I think we're expecting a few more, but since we were all on time, we'll get started. So thank you everybody for joining us for another webinar in the series for American Women Artists. My name is Sandra Harris. I'm Executive Director of AWA. And I'm very happy today. Our topic is the fine art of teaching with Brenda Swenson. So welcome, Brenda.
Thank you.
Brenda is an associate with distinction member of AWA. She was in our last two museum shows at Brookgreen Gardens and Customs House. She's a watercolor artist based out of California, as we were just saying. So she's in the 70-degree zone. I'm in the 30-degree zone today. And she has such an interesting career. She, of course, is an accomplished artist, but she has also mixed in these other pieces of her work. So she's authored books. She has done instructional videos. We're going to talk today about live workshops that she has done. And she's also served the arts community as a board member, as a juror. So she's been very involved in the arts community. But we wanted to hear her talk about teaching for those of you that would like to teach or are teaching. She's going to give you her tips for how she has developed this. And as I mentioned, it's a webinar, so we can't hear or see you. But you are welcome to put questions and comments in the chat. I'll be watching those. And Brenda's going to go through a little bit of a presentation for, some slides and ideas. And when she finishes that, then we can ask her all kinds of questions. So be sure to put those in the chat and I will keep an eye on those. So at this point, I will hand it over to Brenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction. I've been teaching for 20 years now. And I have just come to really enjoy and love the process of teaching. I like the interaction with people. I love the sharing of knowledge. And I have found that teaching has really kind of propelled me as an artist. I have become a better painter because I teach. And I have learned because I have to articulate what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, that it really makes how I paint more concrete. So I'm just going to kind of flip through some slides and show you kind of from the very beginning, if you're not a teacher and you want to teach, things to start thinking about. And those of you who have been teaching for a while, perhaps you've run into some obstacles. And what I want to do is just kind of give you a few heads up of things that you can work into your professional presentation of being a teacher to kind of avoid some of these pitfalls. So with that, I'm going to switch over to my screen and we're going to just go through a few images. Okay, and here we are. Okay, so I'm calling this the fine art of teaching. And whether you're a seasoned instructor or dipping your toe into the waters of a classroom for the first time, there's always room for growth. And I really mean that because I still take workshops. And when I take workshops, not only am I going to perfect my skills, but I'm looking at how other people teach. And if you're a beginner, there is a lot of pitfalls that I hope I can help you avoid. So let me, okay. First thing I want you to really think about is, why do you want to teach? And it might seem like a pretty simple question, but it really opens the door to other things I want you to think about. Is it because you need the income? Okay, there's nothing wrong with needing income, but that might mean you're going to need to teach more and you're going to need to travel more. So think about that. Is it because you want recognition? And there's nothing wrong with that. Recognition from our fellow artists, from our, our family of artist friends is a lovely thing to have. Don't feel bad about that. Recognition in the art world. I love the recognition of being known as a good painter. Do you just want to have connection with other people in this creative environment? That's a wonderful thing too. Or do you want to travel? Now, most people don't think of travel as a part of teaching, but it is a major component of teaching. If you want to get and keep growing, that means that you're going to have to be willing to travel out further and further into the art world. Some people do not want to travel, and that's something to really think about because it can be very taxing, okay? But I've seen more of Europe because I'm a teacher than I ever would have on my own. Next is where to start. If you have not been a teacher at all yet, and you're wanting to dip your toes into the water, places to start thinking about. Think local. Community centers. Most little communities and little towns all around have community centers. Recreational departments, okay? Art groups and senior centers. What you will find in these places is that they already have the classroom. They have the tables, they have the chairs, they have the setup, and they also have a base of people who want to take classes. So it's a good place to start. Okay, think about the age group. Do you want to teach children? Okay, if you're wanting to teach children, you probably will not be traveling. That's going to be local. Okay, teenagers, local. Working professionals and seniors. That means that not only are you going to have people with a little bit, maybe more expendable income, but working professionals are going to have a limited time. Either they're going to take travel workshops further away, or they're going to be taking weekend workshops. So you start thinking about what that's going to mean. Seniors. Many seniors have more freedom of traveling and going further, or just weekends. So think about the age group. How is that going to affect who you're going to teach? Skill level. Okay, beginner, intermediate, advanced. Very, very simple and clear. If you're wanting to teach beginners, you have to remember that maybe you're wanting to share all of your knowledge with the world. But part of teaching is learning to control yourself, that you can only give so much information at a time. And beginners require a whole different set of time, smaller groups, okay? Intermediate and advanced, you can push the learning to a higher level that might be more stimulating to you. And also they will be longer classes generally. Next, okay, we kind of touched on this. Classes are local, okay? Look on the other side of the page. Workshops. Workshops are generally local, national, and international. And I know this is a lot of information, but I want you to think about this because it really hones in who you're going to be teaching. If you're just starting, once again, classes are the best way to start. You'll begin with, as you see on the left side of the screen, once a week. That might feel more manageable to you, okay? Each class will probably be 2 to 3 hours. And the final one is usually they run for around 3 weeks or more. And it can feel like a far more tangible place to step into teaching, where you won't feel overwhelmed with having to come up with 5 days of information. Starting local allows you to kind of build and become stronger as a teacher, okay? Workshops, this is stepping up a higher level, okay? They usually run 3 to 5 consecutive days, okay? What I find, and the reason that I love to teach workshops compared to classes, is that people have more of a mindset to where they really clear out their calendar and they are intensely focused for 3 to 5 days. Ongoing classes, people often are not as serious about being focused every week to show up. It can be, well, I'll skip a week, or it becomes a social. Workshop people are a little bit more serious about learning. So as you see on the screen, 3 to 5 consecutive days with some travel opportunities. Like I travel across the US a lot. The 6 to 10 day workshops are generally workshops that are international, and those can be just a tremendous amount of fun, but also very taxing, okay? How do you build a student base? Yeah, a woman come up one time and she goes, well, where do you get your students? And I kind of thought, well, you have to not just think, I'm going to teach a class and they're going to show up. You've got to work at creating a student base, keeping names of people, okay? How do you start? How do you get people interested in what you're doing? Nowadays, between blogs, newsletters, social media, there's so many ways that you can promote yourself and get people to see what you're doing, and it doesn't cost you money. I mean, gone are the days where you had to promote in magazines because that was the only way you could reach people. So I want you to really think about how social media can work for you. I often, on my pages, will share things like a very short demo, okay? A demo can be a progression showing steps and stages. And then there's also, I'm sharing tools and techniques. So I want to share something that's enough to entice people to where they can see what I'm doing and that I can generate interest. If you just promote material saying, I'm teaching a workshop, you're not going to gather people. What you have to do is share with them what you do. So start thinking about anytime you're doing a painting, to take photographs along the way so you can start to build a little stockpile of images you can use to promote yourself, okay? And it's really an important place to start. Use social media. Okay, study good teachers. This is something that has served me very well. And I want you to think about this. Who was your favorite teacher and why? So just take 5 seconds and think about it. Who was your favorite teacher and why? Was it because their compassion towards you as you were learning? Did they have a sense of humor that made you feel relaxed? Was it their organizational skills, their demos, their enthusiasm? Okay. I know who was the greatest teacher to me, and his name was Gerald Bromer. I took so many workshops with him. He became my mentor. I watched how he taught. And what I did and what I do is that I emulate his teaching style. And this is very different than using their material. You don't use somebody else's material. And I want to be very clear about that. You emulate their style in teaching, how they pace a classroom, how much time they give the students, how much time they spend on a demo. Do they walk around the room? Emulate their style. Don't copy their material. We honor our teachers, okay? So, stepping back to talking about social media. When I put something on social media, I am always very careful to make sure I have information of who that image belongs to. Because if that image gets shared and goes out into the world, we do end up losing our images and people, use them for their own benefit. But We can, in our own way, protect our images by having our names on them, okay? So with this one, what I was doing was just showing, how I use a value study underneath when I do portraits to paint this little boy. Okay, so I'm just showing enough information to kind of entice somebody. They think, oh, I like this. This feels manageable to me. I like how she handles light and shadow. So sharing how I do something, okay? Here's another one, showing techniques. What materials do I use? You, if you want to get somebody's interest on social media, all you have to do is put your paintbrush or your pen down there and people instantly want to know, what is that? Okay, we love our supplies. So use it to your advantage. In this demo here, I was showing how I draw with a yellow pen first. So I put the pen down there and then I used little arrows to point out how I was handling the shadows with yellow. So it's really kind of fun. People love to engage in this level and they're learning that you can teach, okay? So the first image I showed you was a little boy. They can see that I can handle portraiture. And the second one here, they can see that I'm handling florals and I know how to handle negative painting, which is something I teach a lot. So there's kind of two things I'm doing. And then the third one here, you're seeing that how I show a complete progression of a painting. It's so important to stockpile this information. Keep taking pictures as you go so you'll have a wealth of information, especially when it comes time to teach. And you'd be surprised, how many magazines will spot stuff like this. I've been asked to write many articles because they see I know how to photograph for all the stages, and I also know how to write about how I am painting. And I use this information in my newsletter and on my blog. And so it can open up new worlds. Photograph your artwork. Okay, know your stuff. Okay, and I talked about this a little bit about don't copy your teachers. You may emulate their styles, but not their material. Know your stuff. Use material. When I say material, I'm talking about curriculum that you create. Demonstrations, just showed you that. Lectures and handouts. Let these be yours. Build a wealth of reference material, demonstrations that you do. And I hate to keep bringing home the point, but don't plagiarize. Give credit where it's due, okay? And never pass off or use someone else's material as your own. It will come back to bite you, okay? So be very, very careful. Next is curriculum. Do you want to teach one thing? How to do florals, how to do portraits, or varied classes and workshops. So I want you to think about that. What would be the difference between teaching one class well and doing it over and over and over and over? And you're getting my idea here. I teach 4 different workshops. That way, when somebody's interested in a workshop, let's say an art school for me to come and teach, I have 4 classes for them to choose from. Okay, I don't teach one thing. I have 4 classes. Now, the added advantage is I don't get bored. And the worst thing for a teacher to do is get bored with teaching a class. The students will know it, and it will not be a good experience for anybody. You need to remain excited and enthusiasm all the time because enthusiasm is contagious, let me tell you. So I teach 4 different workshops. And I have a very clear definition and description for each one, and they are uniquely different. So, do you want to teach one thing or more? Okay. Maybe after you get comfortable with one class, you'll switch and add another class to it. I don't expect you to know how to do 4 different classes at once. It would be making yourself crazy. Okay. So here's an example of 4 different classes I teach. If I get an art school or an art association that reaches out to me and wants to invite me to teach, I send them this. They can clearly see through each image and description what the class is, what the skill level is, and how many days that class is. So put something like this together. If you have one class, do one, two, do two. But have this material ready to go, because when people are coming to invite you is not the time to make it. Try to have it ready ahead of time. You want to look professional in all times when you're going out to teach, and this will help you have that presentation. So here's a very simple, you see on one side, the negative painting, got my name on it. I talk very clearly about what it is, okay? So you want to have something that's easy to read. There's the image, there's the text that tells you what it is, and you'll start creating a supply list. You need a supply list, not something that's kind of iffy. You want to be very clear on what's required for the class, because there's nothing worse than having somebody show up and be very excited for a class and not have any of the materials to do it. So, you know, think about what's the minimal, what they need to have, and make a supply list with that. It becomes very important. Each class that I teach will have a different supply list. Some of the information, of course, my colors overlap into each one, but some of the materials, such as the size of the brushes, or if I'm teaching sketching, what type of book I use. So develop your supply list. Okay, having contract agreement. Okay, this sounds like business, and it is business, okay? You've always got to treat what you're doing as a professional. A lot of things can go wrong because of a misunderstanding. Not intentional, just a simple misunderstanding. A contract protects you and those you work with. When asked to teach, I automatically send them a copy of my agreement. It saves a lot of wasted time and frustration down the road. Okay, I can send this. They don't particularly even have to sign it, but what they can see is what's expected of them. I have not listed here my fees or any of that because I want this to be a mock one for you to take a look at, but they know my fees. They know my minimum, my maximum number of students. You know, about lodging, I don't stay in people's homes. You know, some of those things you got to make really clear, because some associations will want to try to save money on hotel rooms and stuff. And so I'm a private person. I'm teaching people all day long. I'm totally engaged. But when I'm done teaching, I'm done. I don't want to have to sit and chat to a lovely host for a couple hours when I just want to go to bed. So there are things like this that are super important. Get a contract, have all the things that you need, transportation, that might be airfare, you know, all those things that are required. When they take a look at this, they'll see whether or not you're going to be able to fit into, you know, their financial budget. But if you're teaching professional workshops, you usually are. There's not going to be that big of a thing. I find that my contract is very much in line with other people's of what they're going to pay and then what's expected of me. It's just kind of a safety net that is good to have in place to avoid any kind of unpleasant last-minute experiences. And here we are, just in closing. You know, I've been lucky to paint and teach all over the world, plein air. I love it. And also, I teach studio workshops. I enjoy it all. You know, my life has been incredibly enriched because of all these women who have come into my life. And, you know, I get men periodically, but it's mainly women. And it's interesting that some of my best friendships, surprisingly, have come out of these experiences of meeting women, painting with them, traveling with them for a week or two. So for me, teaching enriches my life. It keeps me sharp. It forces me to be able to articulate how I'm painting, the process, how to verbalize and show, which has strengthened my own work. It's been financially very rewarding for me. But the other side to always remember is it's hard work. And I will never try to say that it isn't. It's probably the hardest work I've ever done. I go to bed more sleep deprived at the end of a week. I mean, I give my all and I absolutely love it. And yes, it is hard work, but it's worth it. It's so worth it. So, I just hope that this presentation will kind of help you to see how to become a better teacher if you're already one. And if you're entering into the art world of teaching, some of those pitfalls to avoid and to hopefully help you so you can have an enjoyable and successful experience as a teacher. Okay. And I'm going to end my screen sharing, and I hope that you've thought of a few questions and you got them for me.
Yes, thank you, Brenda. We're getting a lot of positive feedback. I have some questions too, but the first one that was asked is, first of all, thank you. But she was asking how often you're asked to teach, write, or travel without being compensated.
Oh, no.
And despite your contract, do people ask you to still donate your time, and how do you handle it?
Okay, so break that down because there's a couple questions in there. Let's hit the first one.
So first, how often are you asked to teach or write or travel, any of these things you offer, without being compensated?
I'm never asked to travel without being compensated.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I get asked, trust me, but the only time that I will teach without being reimbursed is when I am teaching locally to schools, or there is a place that I spent 5 years working with emotionally disturbed and abused children. So when it is my choice and I'm actually doing community service, that's when I don't get paid. Yeah.
That's great. The other part of her question is, even if you do a contract, have they ever tried to say, oh, well, couldn't you just cover this, or to donate your time in the negotiation? And how do you, I guess, what's your response?
I've often have people say, yeah, but we're a nonprofit.
Right.
But I'm not a nonprofit, okay? This is my business. And if you come to me and ask me to do something, it's not fair to ask me to give it, okay? If I'm not be compensated, it is my business. I would not go to a car dealership and ask them to fix my car because I'm a nonprofit, you got to treat it like a business. And this is the best. If you act like your classes, you give them away for free, people are not going to value you. And you will find that people will start showing up unprepared because they don't think you put a value on it. Why should they?
Yeah, there's a whole theory of thought within marketing and business and sales around that, if something is for free, we don't assign as much value all the time as if we have to pay. I'm sure there's a sweet spot. That was one of my questions, is how did you begin to set your pricing when you started? And then how has that evolved through the years?
I really watched what the market price was. What other people were asking that were my skill level. Okay. What were they asking for local classes? I started in a place that they had their pay base, that it was already set. It was at an art center. And I understood, okay, well, that's what they're paying everybody. So that was okay. It was a good place to enter in. As I was starting to teach 2 years, 3 years, I started thinking, you know what? No, I want to teach bigger groups now. And that means that I have to rent this room, and that has to be built into my fee. So part of that becomes that if you're only doing 2 or 3 students and they're coming to your house, you can keep the expenses down. But if you decide that you want to teach in a rented room, then you're going to have to be paying for that room. You might even have to be renting the tables. So that is part of your pricing. And I would only do that locally. I would never travel out of town and do that. It would be too problematic.
This sort of rolls into another question that we received. Do the fees for the host organization and the fees for the students, are they two different things? Sort of how is that structured? So does the organization set the cost for the students, or do you, or does it just vary?
It just is like all of the above.
Okay.
There is, and there is a fee that the way that I said it, I'm paid this fee a day. That is my fee for teaching. And that's whether they have 8 students or they have 18 or 20 students. That's my fee per day for teaching. So if they only want to have 8 students, then they're going to have to increase the amount per student to be able to make that. So there's some of that that's going on. Mm-hmm. Some places, the fees that they charge, I actually earn more than my base price. Okay. So, and how else can I say that?
So you might set your flat fee, but then they might give you a portion of the registration.
Yeah. And so they make sure that the registration can cover that. They know if they get the minimum number of students, they'll be able to cover that fee per day. And anything above that is just extra for both of us.
I see. Yes. The person who asked that question said your contract section raised a lot of questions. How did that evolve for you? Did you search for contracts to base yours from? Did it evolve, as you went through scenarios?
I was very lucky. I knew a woman that ran workshops for years, and she ran international workshops.
Okay.
And I was just very good friends with her. And when she found out I was going to be doing these plein air workshops, she said, Brenda, I need you to protect yourself. And this is the contract that I have developed that I've been using with all of my instructors. So she sent that contract to me, and then I revised it to fit in for me, but I was very lucky, You will find that there are very generous people that will share information, like I'm sharing it here too.
Right.
There's a lovely network of people that will start sharing information. They might not want to share dollars with you because that enters into too private of an area, but how they handle some of this stuff. Because I got to be honest, I mean, there's some art associations out there that are problematic, unfortunately. And if you have enough really close friends in the art world out there that are doing what you're doing, we let each other know what's going on, like, oh, this is one that you want to watch. Okay. So, you'll find that other teachers work well in networking. And there's kind of a protective unit of us trying to share information.
So using those contacts through groups like AWA, I'll put them below.
Exactly.
Actually, this next question, they read my mind. What circumstances might lead to a cancellation? I'm still kind of thinking about contracts and how is that handled?
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the pandemic or just pretend that never happened? I'd like to pretend it never happened.
It's a great example, right? I'm sure you had bookings but did your contract deal with it up front?
No, I mean, none of us. I mean, we talk about like a 30-day notice and stuff like that.
Okay.
But my gosh, I mean, the pandemic just turned all of us upside down. I had more airline tickets in my safe than I've ever had before. And I think I had 6 trips lined up with tickets. And there got to be some hard feelings there because I don't buy a ticket until an art association says, it's a go, let's do it, let's get your ticket. And then the pandemic kicked in and everybody went, oh my gosh, everything's canceling. And then they said, okay, well, I think we're okay, let's do it again. Well, at that point, the airline ticket wasn't worth nearly as much. And so maybe it cost me $360. Well, now that flight, it went down to $240.
Right.
So there was a large range of money in there. And then the final this was like a year and a half into the pandemic. And then we went, nope, it's not going to happen at all. And so that ticket, I had to cancel it. Okay. And after so long, you don't get credit for those tickets. And so I contacted the association. I said, I feel you have some responsibility here. And they said, no, you can use that ticket to go somewhere else. And I was like, no, I can't. So I ended up having to eat that airline ticket, which didn't make me very happy.
Right.
And I was supposed to jury their show and had a full workshop and a demo. And that's like one of those, out of all these years, that was probably the one expensive lesson, you know, and I'm thinking that I may even require for the airlines, not the airlines, the art associations to buy the ticket and not for me to have, because usually I have to pay for the ticket up front and they reimburse me. And that was the situation. That was the only time in 20 years I've had something like that happen.
So does your contract now give like that 30-day cancellation, and do you still get paid anything if it gets canceled? So they have a spot where there's no fees.
Yeah, the agreement is in 30 days, 30 days before the workshop, neither one of us are responsible to reimburse the other person. And I think that's reasonable. There's only been one time when I've had to, at 30 days, cancel a workshop. And I don't like to do that. I know because my situation with an airline ticket, then other people are having to deal with that too.
Sure.
This is something I'd like to touch on about if you're going to be traveling and you're going to do these workshops. I had, at the beginning of the pandemic, I had contracts 3 years out to teach. And you're planning your life pretty far out there if you're going to be doing traveling workshops. And sometimes, you know, you don't know what 3 years ahead is going to be. And 3 years ahead, I knew I was getting on an airplane knowing my father had just gone into hospice.
Right.
And I was going to Europe. And there's things you have to do. And I knew that the realistically, I would be home long before he would pass away. But sometimes it's just like, you can't say, well, I don't know if I don't feel like that great and I don't want to. You can't do it that way.
Right.
And it can be very hard on relationships, on planning your life. I mean, 3 years, it took me a long time and this is what I'm doing right now. I am slowing down my teaching schedule because my life was planned for me 3 years in the future. And it made it very hard to have a life that I had a little more spontaneity in it and able to travel with girlfriends and do those things that was enriching me. Okay. So like now I was at one point teaching 18 workshops a year in 10 months. And that was a really, really hard clip. And you can only do that so long. And so now I'm back to about 8 workshops a year, which is, you know, it's a healthy balance.
That's great advice. I think we could do a whole session on contracts and agreements. And I think we will. A follow-up question from that. One of the viewers organized a workshop where the teacher handpicked the students. Is that common? And, you know, in other words, do you have any control over that? Because these students that were handpicked weren't, they were problematic and it was difficult to manage them. How does that work for you?
I don't. I don't do that. No.
Yeah.
I can probably pretty well guarantee that whatever that association was that invited that teacher will not have that teacher back.
Yeah.
Okay. So, nope, I don't do that. I have some very, very good working relationships, places like the Scottsdale Artist School. And, you know, I'd never want to jeopardize. That is a wonderful business relationship. And, that was not good on the teacher's part, unfortunately.
And I think if you're providing that service, I think it's a conflict unless you're just handpicking people in your service, you know, in your circle. But if, as this person was saying, they were organizing it, it shouldn't be up to the teacher to then say who's attending. So that's a great point. I hadn't thought of that. Thank you for that question.
Yeah. Sounds like it was a pretty miserable experience.
I assume so. Yes. I had another question. If we could go back to a minute, if we leave the contract for a second.
Yeah.
And you spoke so well about actually the teaching, right? And observing other teachers and understanding classroom management. And, how did you learn time management and how to pace your classroom? How did you learn that? How did you rehearse it? And how did you keep evolving in that? Because I think a lot of people may not have had that sort of training and then find themselves in front of a classroom.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I said, I really, Gerald Romer was a dear mentor and friend and a teacher to me. And I'm a keen observer. I really just watched how he nurtured without dominating over them and telling them what to do, but giving them permission, showing them how to do stuff. But one thing I think that really, really resonated with me is that I'm one of those people that when I went to school, I did not enjoy school. In fact, I did everything I could to get out of school as soon as I could. I took night courses, I took summer courses, I did everything, and I graduated a half a year early because I didn't enjoy school, because school did not teach to a way that I could learn, okay? And I know it's not my intelligence. I know that I learn very differently as an artist. I am a very visual learner, and I need enough information, and then I need to go apply it, and then I need a little bit more information and go apply it. And the way that I teach is the way that I wish somebody would have taught me, okay? That they would have been patient with me, that they would have been one of those teachers that I do, you do, we do. I do, you do, we do. And nobody's getting left behind. We're building, we continually just keep building and building. And the first thing you've got to do as a teacher is to make people feel comfortable, to make them feel relaxed, because everybody that walks into the classroom, they are so dang anxious. I mean, and I remember that even now when I go and I take a workshop, I'm like, don't come by me, just walk by me, don't look at what I'm doing. I feel that as a student, and it helps me remember how students feel. They feel like all of their skills and all their abilities are laying bare on the table, and they're going to feel so inadequate with everybody in the room. So part of it is the teaching in a way that would have really embraced me, made me feel like I wasn't dumb. Okay. I do a demo. I give them a handout. And so I'm saying it, I'm doing it, and I'm giving a handout. And those are 3 different ways of learning. Some people will learn through hearing you. Some will learn through seeing you. And some people will need to have the handout. So I'm trying to approach people in the 3 categories where they will learn. And if they're not going to learn in one of those 3, they're not paying attention. Okay? But I mean, for me, the idea that I can't reach somebody, that I can't get the information across is something that really keeps me going, because I have a box in the other room that's about this big that is handwritten cards and letters and saying, thank you. You finally unlocked that information for me I never understood before. So I know that the way that I learn is probably the way that they felt too. Okay. So
that's great. That's great advice. That empathy and acknowledging, it's that multiple intelligence theory that people learn in different ways, and that a great teacher tries to discover those different ways. That's wonderful.
And the first day of a class is, I spend as much time assessing skill level across the room as I'm doing teaching. I'm trying to figure out where everybody is, because each day I'm building upon the day, and I can't leave anybody behind. So a lot of assessing people in a classroom.
The question just came in, do you follow the order of do, talk, demo, handout? Do you always go in that order?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No. When I'm outdoor plein air painting, I can't do that. Okay. Because I'm going to have a building we've never dealt with before or whatever, but I'm going to talk about what we're doing that day, whether we're going to be focusing on light and shadow, right? And I'm going to be showing how I'm painting light and shadow in my painting. So yeah, I'm talking, I am showing, and I may have a hand up, but not for everything in plein air. It's a little hard to do. So it can be challenging. Yeah.
So what do you think sort of on that teaching piece one more time? Then I have another question if we don't have others, but what is your biggest challenge when you walk into a classroom? Is it that trying to figure out everyone's levels? Do you get any information like that ahead of time? Just what is the biggest challenge when you're ready to kick it off?
What is the biggest challenge? Oh, I think assessing, that for me is, I mean, with the negative painting that I teach, it's an intermediate class, intermediate and beyond. All the other classes, beginning on up is welcome. Okay. But, people will tell you they're more advanced than they are. Okay. And there's something, and this is a little off track, so I want to make sure we still stay in this realm. When I teach plein air workshops, and I'm going to be meeting with 15 people for the very first time on location, it's really hard to walk around and assess everybody there. It's really challenging. And so what I do is I ask them to tell me a paragraph about themselves. I don't want a whole dissertation. And what they want to take away from the workshop. Are they interested in how I handle edges? Do they want to know how I do shadows? Are they wanting to know how I create depth in my sketches? If they can tell me one thing in particular that they want to focus on during that workshop, throughout the week when I'm working with them, I can address that one topic one-to-one, because it's very hard when people are dispersed So I want people to have realistic expectations of what they want from me and what they want to learn. And that's part of it, is getting people to have realistic expectations of what they can learn in that period of time. It's our mind can only take so much new information and apply it. And you've got to apply it. It's not what you just do in the classroom, it's what you do out of the classroom. So really having to get people to have realistic expectations of what they can do.
Is there a sweet spot for the number of people that you have found?
Yeah. I think the sweet spot for outdoors is I can't go above 15. That's 13 to 15 is it when I'm outdoors. I know I can manage that, but I also manage that with having a staff with me. Okay. So when I teach plein air workshops, I'm working with a very skilled association, and they are helping me do that. If they weren't there, I would say 8 people if I was by myself. Okay. So if you have help, that's a different situation. Okay. In the studio, 18.
Okay.
18 is sweet. Okay, I wouldn't want to go above that. 14 is a breeze. Okay, but 18 is where I don't like to go above 18, because keep in mind that I show and then I cover the room, and then we move on to the next step. They are not copying what I'm doing. They're having to come up with their own designs. I am presenting to them. I'm teaching technique. I'm not teaching subject. So I have to have enough time to cover the room. If you have 15 people, just for an easy number, 15 people, and I'm going to let you do the math for me here, okay? If I have 15 people and I spend 3 minutes with each person when I go around the room, how many minutes is that?
Right, there's your 45 minutes right there.
Exactly. That's 45 minutes. How many times am I going to cover that room in a day? And 3 minutes isn't long. So you've got to be realistic. How much time can I give a person?
Yeah.
And
I think that's great advice for sort of planning your workshop. That because teachers do that in the classroom. You know, traditional teachers, I'm going to spend 3 minutes on this. It's going to take 2 minutes for them to move. It's going to take 4 minutes for and it sounds funny to break it down that deeply, but if you have a set amount of time, it's really helpful. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And that way, you know, I can always keep people you know, in the know, keep them moving, because if you get too far away from somebody, they fall into the self-preservation panic mode and you'll never get them back. So you really, the first day I'm holding them very tightly. Okay.
Right. That's great. I'm looking to see if we have any last few questions. I'm going to ask another, just kind of switching one more gear. You gave great advice about having materials ready, how to market, using social media. Did you also study what other people did on social media or what they wrote, their workshop descriptions? How did you do you have a natural ability as a writer? How did you kind of arrive at those pieces?
I'm a great observer. Okay. And I think as artists, that's what we do. We watch what other people do. But I think you can only do that for so long, and then you've got to move off on your own. But I spent a lot of time watching how other people did stuff right and how they did it wrong. You will learn as much from watching how something went poorly as it from going well. Okay. So in particular, you talking about with social media, how do I do it?
Both with social media, and then you shared those examples of your workshop descriptions that you have available. Just sort of all of that marketing and content.
Yeah. Okay, well, it really I learned to write through creating a blog. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
It's funny because I used to feel so incredibly inadequate in writing. It just really scared me. And the funny thing that happened was the first little book that I ever wrote, people wanted me to do a book about my sketching techniques, and I didn't want to do it because I didn't, number one, I didn't think a publisher would want it, and this is leading somewhere. Okay. So what I did is I just sent it to a publisher expecting them to say rejected, and then I could get people to quit asking me to do the book. Right. But when I sent it, they said, yes, we'd love to. And then I went into a panic mode because I was going to have to write. And what I realized is that we don't have to be great writers. Okay. All we have to do is try to write how we speak. And so each morning when I go for a walk, I would just take my cell phone and I would talk into it as if I was in front of the class. So use your voice. Don't try to be some great novelist and write this great poetry. Get information across. Just be very clear about what you're offering. Okay. And the funny thing about that little book is that my publisher ended up saying to me that that was her favorite book of all the books that she had done during her years because it had the artist's voice. So
I love that. And that's great advice. You can just use your phone, record, speak. And in today's age, you can use tools like AI.
You're talking to her.
To take your recording and summarize it for you. Or you can ask ChatGPT, how would I write a lesson plan for blah, blah, blah. And it at least starts you. So I think that's great advice. Your voice is the important one. And that's lovely. We have one semi-related question about using different tools before we wrap up. And the question is, how did you learn to use some digital tools? Like you talked about taking photos or doing videos. Did you just learn by doing? Did you take classes? What do you recommend?
Oh boy, technology. That's really, that's a deep, dark hole. Yeah, the funny thing is when I was going to do that first book, I was basically not that involved with computers at all. And I had a friend who was a computer guy, and all he wanted to know was how to clean up images, how to write in Word, and I just told him the things that I wanted to learn. He came over and just gave me little tiny lessons on how to do each thing. as you start to learn something like Photoshop elements, then you can begin to explore it a little bit more. But you really don't want to be messing with your images. You want them to be very true to color and all of that. But yeah, you know, these younger kids, I mean, they are a wealth of information, really.
Yeah.
And even to pay a younger person to come over and give you a 2-hour lesson a week, I mean, it's worth the money to them if they're good in it.
Sure.
And for you to learn how to do it, because I don't want to know how to do all of it.
Right.
I want to know how to do images cleanup. And I want to know how I can drop images into text, how I can do just very simple stuff. And I tell you, the computers are pretty darn friendly with having templates to drop.
Yes, very much so today. Programs like Canva and all of those that basically do it for you. It's better than it was even 10 years ago. I think we're coming up with some more webinar topics. Sort of going off of that, and then we'll wrap up. You talked about having a good storehouse of your own images, of your works in progress and that sort of thing. Do you have a system that you like and use to store those or catalog them so you can find them easily?
I am paranoid, so paranoid of losing my stockpile of it. I mean, I've got it backed up on the cloud. I've got it on a hard drive. I've got it on, I mean, this is my livelihood, all these images. Right. I'm scared to death of losing them. Whenever I take images, you know, I pretty well download them right away. And I don't save them in iPhoto or any of that. I instantly put them into the catalog, the folder that they belong in. Okay. And I just have folders that basically is art, whether it's sketching, illustrated journal, negative painting, and I break them down into these folders. Okay. But whenever I'm taking pictures along the way, and you know, some of these paintings aren't the best teaching material, you know, but some of them really are. I'm always make sure that I'm writing down just some very simple text so I'm remembering what colors that I'm using. And it doesn't take much to do that on your phone. I send myself more emails in a day of things I want to remember because I don't want to sit down at the computer. I just want to dictate it, and I do that. But building just anything that you see that's interesting, whether it's you look down at your desk, and this is a really good thing. Show your work in process, you know, showing there where you've got your paintbrush and you've got your palette laying there, and then you've got the painting happening in the background. You know, show process. People love process. Absolutely. In painting is almost stagnant, but as it's in this process, people are very engaged in watching something come to life, and maybe even showing the stage each day to keep your followers building up and wanting to see what happens. You know, give them something that they're interested in. Surprisingly, I've had people kind of follow my stories that way of wanting to see where it goes.
That's a great tip, because it's not, once you learn how to take a photo and post it onto your social media story, it's not difficult to kind of get into that.
And use the portrait mode when you take pictures. It is so great because when you're taking it down at this angle, all that stuff that's in the background just becomes a little bit out of focus, and it really makes those pictures look professional. Okay. And all you have to do is touch on your camera where you really want it to be in focus, and the rest of it drops out. And then you can back that off. Once you go to edit it, you can make it more in focus or less, but it really, you know, it keeps any clutter in the background, and it really has a professional, snazzy look to it. So, and it's right there on our cell phones. It's ridiculous.
Right. And you're really opening up ideas for the future to make sure the members can see some easy tools, because it is easier than it's ever been. And it's not as intimidating as it used to be. So we will do that. And what a great way to promote your teaching and give people a quick idea of what you're going to do. So I think that's wonderful. Yeah. Well, I think that was our last question, and we're almost at an hour. So unless one more, I just want to thank you again. And I put a link to Brenda's website in the chat so you can see her scheduled workshops, what that looks like. She has a couple of sample supply lists. He can look at her video, sign up for her newsletter to kind of see how she does that. But I think this was so helpful. We're getting lots of thank yous in the chat.
Thank you.
So helpful. I love how you laid it out for everybody. So thank you so much. And thank you everybody that attended. We will upload the recording and make it available if you want to go back and review any of it. So thank you again.
Thanks. I enjoyed it. Love sharing information. It was great fun. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for supporting AWA this way. We really appreciate it. We'll see you all next time.
My pleasure. Bye.